Good morning, everybody. I'm here with Jack Cheong, and welcome to the fifth in a series of AGIF Sustainability webinars. In the coming months, every week, we continue to deliver webinars on turf and club management with industry leaders to supply career-building information to professionals in Asia. The Asian golf industry is a non-for-profit membership federation comprised of suppliers and facilities in the turf, club, and sports industry. And the Federation focuses on building sustainable practices in both environmental and economic aspects throughout the Asia-Pacific region. We believe that key in the development of a sustainable industry is the education and empowerment of the professionals in the industry, hence we're running fine webinars like this one. We have developed the AGIF Certificate in Greenskeeping, which is supported by the RNA and 5 AGIF member organizations. The CIG focuses on developing the skill set of the greenkeeper and turf professional throughout Asia. We also focus on club management education as a partner of the Club Management Association of America. And we rolled out education in Asia for the pathway to the Certified Club Manager degree. The CCM is considered the gold standard in club management industry globally, and managers in Asia now can achieve the necessary education here in Asia as a result of this partnership with the CMAA. It is vital to have strong partners in implementing education throughout Asia, and our education is recognized for credits from the PGA of America, the PGA of GB in Ireland, the PGA of Australia, the PGA of Japan, the Club Management Association of America, and the GCSAA. Due to travel restrictions from the COVID-19 pandemic, webinars are the only way we can continue to deliver education at this moment. We'll resume education when travel restrictions ease, and we'll keep you posted as this develops. Over the last few months, we have spent a lot of time improving our digital offering and membership benefits. For more information, please log on to www.agif.asia, as well as our LinkedIn and Facebook company pages. Please also sign up for our weekly newsletter to join over 10,000 industry contacts to receive a weekly industry update. Lastly, the AGIF is a not-for-profit federation, and now more than ever, we rely upon membership dues to operate. So if you like what we do or you think that your facility or company will benefit from communicating with the industry, please note that our membership benefits are substantial and can be seen on the website under AGIF membership benefits. Please take a look. And if you are already an AGIF member, thank you very much. Your ongoing support is greatly appreciated. On that topic, we'd like to thank our sponsor for today's webinar. Without their support, we would not be able to run these events. It is the Toro Company, who is a founding member of the AGIF and a strong supporter of industry education. On to some housekeeping issues. Jack will present on the topic for roughly 60 minutes, and we'll have 30 minutes after that for a Q&A. The chat buttons are on throughout, so please feel free to ask questions, which then we can then voice to Jack during the Q&A session. There's also a link for an AGIF mailing list. Please fill in this at your convenience to receive more information from the AGIF. Now, on to the main event. Jack Cheong has been the Golf Co Superintendent at Royal Selangor Golf Course for over 14 years, and during the time oversaw major renovations of the golf course and was one of the first to plant Tiffigal on the greens in Malaysia. Our Royal Selangor Golf Course hosted the Maybank Championship in Malaysia in 2016. Jack has a degree in golf course operations from the USA and also holds an MBA. He is also past president of the Golf Co Superintendents Association of Malaysia and has spoken at AGI events in Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. He is also a mentor in one of our Certificate of Greenkeeping program. We value his partnership highly. Jack, welcome.
Hi, Eric, thank you. I must say I'm feeling a bit nervous. It's the first time I'm doing a webinar. Can only see you, so I just imagine I'm just talking to you. Shall we get started?
Great.
All right. Can you see the presentation?
Yep, there it is. Thanks, Jack.
Is it working?
Yes, it is. Very clear.
Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, just a little about me. As what Eric so kindly introduced. I have a degree from the USA in golf course operations, and I also have a master's in business administration from the University of Newcastle, Australia. I've been in Royal Selangor actually more than 14 years. I first started in 1998 and left in 2001. So it's a total of 17 years. I've been here since 2007. Can't find employment elsewhere, so doing free charity work for the AGIF. Also happened to do some internship at the TPC KL a long time ago, and also at TPC Sawgrass. And as mentioned, I'm also the past president of the GCSAM. Just a little bit about RSGC for those that don't know. This is the map I got from Google Maps. You can see here, this is the Petronas Twin Towers, and this is Royal Selangor. So we are actually one of the few golf courses right in the middle of Kuala Lumpur. RSGC is a private members club. We have 6,500 members, roughly 1,500 active members. And we don't really receive that many rounds a month, about 3,000 to 4,500. It's member owned and run by a committee. They operate on a 2+2 year term. And my green subcommittee oversees the golf course. We recently just concluded our AGM. It was a bit late due to COVID, and we're starting a new term for our green subcommittee this year actually. So we established in 1893. Recently had our 125th anniversary, and we're one of the oldest clubs in Asia. We have 340 acres, 2 18-hole golf courses, and 1 9-hole practice 9. So in 2005, we embarked on a renovation project to upgrade the golf course, and we did all 36 holes. The architect was Mr. Brad Monk from Nelson and Hayworth, and our design brief was to maintain the heritage feel of RSGC and to keep the parkland design, and of major importance was to preserve all the trees on the golf course. During that time, we planted Tiff Eagle on the greens. We had Paspalum on the fairways, and we maintain our cowgrass roughs. Just to show you what RSGC looked like before the renovations. This is probably typical of the post-war British-built golf course. It's quite flat and featureless, and we had the cowgrass fairways. These are some of the pictures during construction. We ripped up everything. As you can see, we left the trees alone, roped them off to preserve the trees to make sure they weren't affected by the construction. This was during grow-in, and this was just after it was done. That's another hole which we had quite a big difference. Previously, it's quite a featureless hole. And during construction, we put in a huge lake, and this is what it looks like now. I think a big improvement over before. That's what Eric pointed out. We successfully hosted our Maybank Championship in 2016. It's a co-sanctioned European and Asian tour event, and we managed to maintain a green speed of 11.5 through tournament week. This was probably when the golf course looked the best. We're quite proud of what we achieved during the week. And to celebrate the occasion, we took a group picture on the 18th green. For those that don't know, yes, this is my entire golf course team. We have roughly 100 staff on our team at the moment. So coming back to today's topic, attaining the suitable green speed for your facility members and guests. Actually, I thought this was quite an interesting topic. Usually presentations on green speed are all about getting the fastest green speed possible, but today here we're talking about what is a suitable green speed. So we need to determine, every golf course is different, so we need to see what are the factors that affect coming up with a suitable green speed for your facility. So what can I actually contribute to this discussion on green speed? I think there are many others who are more qualified to talk about obtaining maximum green speed. Royal Selangor isn't that renowned for having the fastest greens in Malaysia. To that honor, we have have actually quarter per mile is probably one of the fastest in Malaysia with the green speed of 10 daily and turn-on speeds approaching or even exceeding 30. Usually in Royal Selangor, we used to maintain him a little faster, but for reasons that I'll explain, we slowed him down a bit over the recent years. So usually we roll about maybe 9.5 daily. And for weekends, we try and get 10.5. So I think what's important to note here is that, we always seem to be obsessed with increasing green speed. I think trying to achieve the ultimate green speed is perhaps only one part of the story. We have to take into account what limitations we face, and we all have different issues that we need to overcome. So we need to try and find out what would be a suitable green speed that we can target for our own facility. So what exactly is the role of a golf course superintendent? I do love this meme. I think it's one of the better ones that I see. Our friends always think that we play a lot of golf. That's probably the least accurate of it all. I haven't touched a golf club in 2 years, I think. My members seem to think I burn all their money. Society thinks that we're more like Caddyshack. Golf Pro or the golf department thinks we're glorified gardeners. Members think we're expected to do miracles. But I think those that are golf course superintendents know that our role is more than just growing grass. We do have a lot of administrative work. We attend meetings, we set budgets, we plan. And there's a lot more to it than just growing grass. So as golf course superintendents, what exactly is our role? Have we ever considered what we actually do? Do we just manage grass? Of course, this is one of the main things that we are expected to do in our daily jobs, to look after the grass on the golf course. But I think there's a lot more to it that people don't see. We also need to manage our staff. In Royal Selangor, we have 100 over staff. And sometimes it can be a challenge to make sure they're all productive and to do what they need to do. We also have to manage budgets. Although Royal Selangor has a reputation for having a lot of money, it's not my money. And I'm certainly accountable to the committee, and we have to justify every single cent that we spend. It's the members' money, so I'm actually spending their money. And sometimes they're not so willing to let go of their money for the golf course. I think this brings me on to the main point of the topic, actually. I think one of the main things that we do, and I think most superintendents need to be aware of, is that we also manage our owners and members. What exactly do we manage with them? We have to manage their expectations. This does not mean that we have to tell them to aim lower, but it is of critical importance that we match their expectations with what resources we have available. Usually our owners and members are the ones who decide what we have available to us to achieve their objectives. So I think it's very important that we do manage what they expect from us with what they actually provide us to do our job. I know at times it feels like this is what the members expect us to do, to perform some miracles, especially during these challenging times. I think a lot of our budgets have been cut. We are expected to do more with less. So let me touch on a little bit about what is an expectation. This is one of my favorite quotes also supposedly from Warren Buffett, but I haven't been able to confirm this to be true. He says the secret to happiness is having low expectations. Actually, I think this quote was attributed to his reference to what is the secret to having a successful marriage. He said it's not the looks, the money, the intelligence, or anything else. The secret to a happy marriage, is low expectations. So should we also tell our members and owners to also lower their expectations in relation to green speed? As I mentioned before, every facility has their own limitations. What we do at Royal Selangor may not apply to somewhere else. What they do in Kota Permai may not be applicable to another facility. So we need to identify what those limitations are within our own facility. So are we supposed to tell our owners and members to lower their expectations or ask them for more money? The response you might get back from them, especially in these times, is that maybe they need to find another golf course superintendent. So if anybody tries this strategy with them and it doesn't work, please don't come back to see me about this. Actually, in all seriousness, the role of the golf course superintendent is actually to manage the expectations of the owners and members within what resources that we have available. So what green speeds do your owners or members expect at your golf course? Usually, if you ask any of them, what will they tell you? As fast as possible. They watch tournaments on TV, they attend the Malaysian Open at Kota Permai, and they all expect our greens to roll at 13 and 14 and the same meeting. An example of this is at Oakmont Country Club, a golf course in the US, whose reputation for fast greens. Their members expect daily green speeds of at least a minimum of 13 feet. So to achieve this, the golf course superintendent triple cuts their greens every day, and they roll until they achieve the required speeds. So for them, they have the expectation of having 13 feet, but their members understand that they need some resources to get there, and this is what they allow their superintendent to do. So they give him the resources that he requires, and he is expected to meet those expectations. So coming back to this, how do we determine what is the suitable green speed for your facility? To that effect also, is faster always better? Although we like to have greens that are faster, are there any downsides to it? Certainly having faster greens is more expensive to maintain. We need to do a lot more to the greens. There's a lot more wear and tear, expenses related in machinery and labor. This is something that a lot of clubs should consider also, that having faster green speeds also slows down play. I think there's been a study by the USGA where every foot, and they have a statistic that says how much slower the golf gets. So for public golf courses or golf courses that depend on play to generate revenue, this might not be the best thing to do, as it slows down play and limits how many rounds you can get through your facility. And there's also less margin for error. What I mean by that is, for a golf course superintendent, the faster you run the greens, the less margin for error you have when it comes to making sure your greens don't have any issues or disease or any other problems. So each facility has their different challenges, and they all have their own limitations. We have different budgets to deal with. We have different weather conditions, sunlight, environment, and also we have different traffic conditions. Certain golf courses with higher traffic volume, maybe they have other issues to deal with. Maybe that will limit their green speed. So we have to take a look at all these aspects. So what are the limiting factors? To me, there are actually just three main things. There's the grass, there's the construction, in the sense that how is your golf course constructed? Was it done properly? And also the maintenance that we carry out on a golf course. All these three just relate back to one thing, right? They relate back to budget. How much money does your golf course give you? How much money have they spent on the grass? How much money they spent on the construction? And how much money they give you to maintain the golf course? If you look at the grass, this is probably the biggest limiting factor when it comes to determining what is your green speed. This is, of course, the hardest to change, and it is the most expensive to do. So it may not be practical for your golf course to change the grass species that they have. just to get the faster green speed. But I think if you ever renovate your golf course or are in the position to change the grass, I do think that this is one of the major factors that you need to consider if green speed is the most important thing to your facility. Each species definitely has their own maximum achievable green speed. They have different growth habits, density, leaf blades. They build up thatch at different rates. And maybe this is not completely 100% accurate, but I would say that probably the bent grass and the cool season grasses have the ultimate highest achievable green speed, followed by maybe the ultra dwarf, tiff dwarf, paspalum, and zoysia. Now I know they have many new different zoysia varieties coming out. They have some for greens as well, but until they've been proven on the market, you know, the jury is still out to see what are their maximum achievable green speed. As mentioned, yes, these are probably exceptions to the rule, but generally, I think this list is quite accurate. So having the slower grass species on your greens would have a limiting factor on what the maximum achievable green speeds that you can achieve. There's another factor that has come up. When the ultra dwarfs first came out on the market, the maintenance practices were very different from traditional tiff dwarf. Last time when we managed tiff dwarf, we probably top dressed the greens maybe once a month. And when the ultra dwarfs came out, then the management practices completely changed. At RHGC, we top dress the greens weekly now. So things have changed a lot. You know, we have foliar spraying, we have other grooming, and many different cultural practices that we do now that we didn't do before. So the question also comes that although you have an older grass species like tiff dwarf, what if you started managing them like an ultra dwarf? I think Kota Permai has tiff dwarf greens which are older, but yet they're still able to achieve those green speeds. So it's something to think about. If you are able to maintain the greens more intensively and you're able to carry out what you need to do, it's also possible that you overcome these limitations and are able to increase the average green speed. The other two things, construction and maintenance, to me, I classify them as being related to plant health. So how does plant health affect green speed itself? Plant health is not directly correlated to green speed, but it has a big impact on determining how much stress the plant can tolerate. For construction, you know, we have to make sure our golf course is properly constructed. What are the specifications used to construct the greens? How many years since the construction was carried out? And all this actually affects the soil profile of the green. You know, having improper construction or not maintaining the greens profile properly will have a long-term impact on your plant health. Are there any environmental issues that you deal with? Are there shade issues on your greens or drainage issues? So all this also will have an impact on the plant health. How about maintenance? It has, you know, what heights do we mow? What fertility program do we have? What cultural practices do we have in place? How about thatch control? How often do we aerate? And are there any issues with drainage? So all these maintenance practices are key to, they influence how healthy your plant species is. And how healthy your plant species is impacts how much you can do with regards to your green speed. And everything listed above, actually it comes back to it. It's all about money. It's all about the budget and how much money they give you. So coming back to this question again, what is a suitable green speed? Should we just say that we want the same green speeds as Oakmont? How about Kota Permai? Bottom line is actually speed costs money. The faster you want the greens to roll, the more maintenance will be required, and obviously it will cost more money to do. if you come to the topic of talking about green speed, usually people talk about how we can increase it and etc. etc. Actually, there's plenty of good information on the factors that affect green speed. Dr. Thomas Nicolai actually wrote one of the best books on this. This is the Superintendent's Guide to Controlling Putting Green Speed. In it, he covers all these aspects, and he firstly, obviously, we have to know what are the proper methods for measuring green speed. He also has statistics showing how weather has an impact on green speed. And as I touched on about construction, putting green root zones, different turf grass species. In case of those that are wondering how much impact mowing heights affect green speed, obviously the lower is faster, but by how much? You know, in his book also he touches on that, how much increase you see from lowering your height. It's also fertilization. This is something I'll touch on in a while. He's a big proponent of lightweight rolling, and you can see how often you roll, and he has different strategies and research that he has done on this. And he has also a section on tournament preparation. So for those that want more information on how to increase your green speed or what factors that affect it, I would highly recommend his book. Or if you don't want to buy his book, the AGIF has actually invited him as one of the speakers. He will be coming on October 22nd. He'll be talking about the A, B, and C's of putting green maintenance. So for those that came here today looking for answers about how to increase their green speed, maybe you can also attend the webinar on the 22nd, and you can ask the man himself some questions related to that. So for Golf Co Superintendent, how do we get our members to agree to give you more money? Can you come there and tell them that if you give me this amount of budget, I will give you this amount of green speed? So in order to do that, actually, we need to quantify the cost of each management practice we carry out. As I touched on earlier as to the role of the Golf Co Superintendent, it's not just about growing grass. We also need to manage our budgets, we need to manage our expectations, and we need to manage our owners and members. And this, to me, is one of the biggest parts of my job here at RHGC. It's not such a simple matter to just go to the members and say, give me more money. They will have questions as to why, as to how do you justify this. So quantifying the cost of each management practice we carry out is an important and critical aspect of being a Golf Co Superintendent. Just something to think about is sometimes when we say how much does it cost to increase green speed, we tend to just look at the factors that affect green speed directly, like mowing. An example of this is what I mentioned earlier at Royal Selangor, we have dropped our daily green speed slightly. Comes back to this, the cost involved with mowing. We used to mow our greens at a much lower height, about 3 to 3.2 mil. And we found that by doing so, it required us to switch to micro bed knives instead of tournament bed knives. So by doing so, we actually were required to change our bed knives at double the rate as what we used to do. So our green subcommittee discussed the matter. They were asking us why our spare part cost was going up. And then I highlighted this as one of the issues. I said if they want to maintain this cutting height, then there's a cost involved. I presented the cost to the green subcommittee, and then they decided, okay, instead of doing this, why don't we just stick to tournament bed knives? And we halved our machinery cost. So this is something that as a superintendent, we probably shouldn't decide on our own. Obviously, it affects the membership. Obviously, we have some slightly slower green speeds. But if this is something that your members or your committee or the owners want, and it's up to them to decide whether the cost benefit of spending the extra money is worth it or not. My new committee has come in, and it's one thing that they'll be looking at. And we have a decision soon on whether they want us to go back to what we used to do before. So the other things that we do, like the rolling or the dusting, you know, they all cost money. But I just want to highlight that sometimes when we quantify the cost of increasing green speed. We just look at these three aspects, or the things that are directly related. We should also consider the other things that are required to maintain plant health. For example, if we do a lot of rolling to achieve our green speed, you will inevitably result in higher compaction. So in order to maintain plant health, do we need to increase our holotining practices? Every time we do holotining, how much does it cost? How much do the tines cost? How much time does it take? Do we need to verticut more to keep the thatch under control, to have a firmer surface so that we can increase our green speeds? How about top dressing? How often do we do it? Do we need to do it more? Or even fertility, switching to a foliar program, plant growth regulators. So when we quantify costs of doing something, especially when it relates to green speed, I think it's also important that we mentioned or we look into the aspects that are related to plant health. So I think the members must know that for if you want to do something, there is a cost related to it, and it's just not just the direct cost. We also need to inform them of how often we need to do all these things. One of the challenges at most golf courses is getting the permission or time to holotine. Usually some do it once a year, some don't even do it on a yearly basis. I think our job as superintendents is also to make sure that they understand the importance of doing such things. And if they want higher green speeds, then maybe this is one of the things that we can look at to inform them that, you know, if you want higher green speeds, we need to roll more. So we also need to carry out holotining. So this is a discussion that, you know, you should have with your members and owners so that they are aware of what needs to be done to achieve what they want. I touched on this already. Bed knife, we have all the different cutting heights. So one of the easiest ways to increase green speed is probably to lower your cutting height, provided your grass can survive at the lower cutting height. So there always is a cost to it, you know. Is grinding something that you could do to increase green speeds? I think there have been studies done that show that having sharp mowers does have an impact on green speed. Are your members or owners prepared to get you a grinding machine? Do you have the mechanics? Do you have the time to carry out grinding? How about double cutting? This is another method that we use here also to increase green speed. We also need to factor in the labor costs and the machinery wear and tear. What in effect we are doing with double cutting is that we are actually doubling the time that it takes to mow all our greens. So we have labor costs, and we also wear out machines at double the rate. Same goes with rolling and top dressing and dusting. Dusting sand costs money. Labor costs money to apply dusting sand. So we need to gather all this information. We need to quantify the cost, and you know, we have to have an objective discussion with the owners and members, and to inform them that, okay, in order to achieve this level of speed, I need this, and this is how much money it's going to cost. I think if we present the objective information, we present data to the members, I think they'll be much more receptive to listening or making a decision. So either they have a choice to either perhaps lower the expectations slightly, or maybe they might even give you the resources that you need. You need a new mower, you need a new grinding machine, or you need more money for your spare parts. So this is something to look into. For superintendents, I think it's important that we have all this data so that we can have an objective discussion on this method. What about the other factors to consider in the need for speed? As I touched on, I think plant health is of the utmost importance. The healthier the grass, the more stress it can tolerate. And when we subject the grass to a lot more practices like double cutting, like rolling, it's important that the grass is able to survive. So we need to also focus on reducing all the limiting factors that affect plant health. If you have shade issues, maybe you can consider trimming the trees, or any other problems that you have. If you have problems with the soil profile, perhaps you can consider an aggressive foliar thinning program and top dressing with an amendment. Or you have some fertility issues that are highlighted in the soil test. I think we need to put into steps in place to address these issues. So yes, the more stress the plant can tolerate, the more it can tolerate lower and more frequent mowing, and we can also roll the greens more without affecting the grass so much. So all this while I've been touching on matters that require money. I thought maybe I'd share just a little on maybe how we can get some free green speed. I'm sure your members and owners would like something like this. This is something to consider, how you can also save money while perhaps increasing some of your green speed. I like to ask people, like, which is faster, you know? Is concrete faster than carpet? Usually I would ask the audience this, but since it's a webinar, I have no opportunity. I don't know who I'm talking to. I can't see all of you. So I answer on your behalf. Obviously, concrete is faster. Why is it faster? Because it's firmer, it's smoother. So the ball will definitely roll faster on concrete. So in conclusion, having less grass is faster, which is why we talk about mowing lower, double cutting. So we are just trimming the grass off to give the ball the opportunity to roll faster. So if less grass is faster, obviously no grass is the fastest, which brings me to my point. In this case, my assistant here you can see the concerned look he had while taking green speed during our Maybank Championship. From this picture, you can see the problem. We only had 3 feet of ball roll. I think maybe we had too much of grass on the green. But in all seriousness, coming back to this, we need to ask ourselves also, do we get paid to grow grass as superintendents? Growing grass is not actually our primary objective. This is not a cash crop. It's not palm oil or some other plant that we get paid for how much plant that we produce. We don't get paid for how much grass clippings we collect. So if our objective is not to grow grass, then what is it that we do? If you look at the things that we do to grass, we actually try our best to kill all the grass. But on the other hand, we try and kill it, but we have to make sure it doesn't die. We force grass to grow on sand. We grow imported grass that needs lots of sunlight, which sometimes can be a challenge in Malaysia with all the cloud cover we have. We cut it daily, we roll it, we punch holes in it, we really cut it. You know, we even spray fertilizers to get it to grow. And then we also apply chemicals at the same time that stop it from growing. What we do actually is we do all this to prepare the surface for the game of golf. So we need to ask ourselves, how much do you actually want your grass to grow? If less growth means faster green speed, we want the grass to grow just enough not to die. What do I mean by this? If you notice and if you take green speed readings, if you fertilize your greens too much, obviously your grass grows a lot more, and that results in slower greens. If, on the other hand, you don't have enough growth, then your grass will start to thin out and we have bare areas start to form. So my personal definition of all this is the grass should grow just enough to recover from all the stress that it's under. We don't want it to grow anymore, and we're trying to make sure that it's right at the limit and doesn't grow any less. So in order to do this, do we actually know how much the grass should grow? And do we also know what are the factors that affect the growth of grass? As with everything that we are trying to achieve, we need to collect data on the matter. So we need to measure what we are trying to achieve, and we need to get some objective data. What can we measure? For those that green speeds are a priority, I think it is important that we measure what we want to achieve. So we need to measure our green speeds on a daily basis. to determine how much your grass is growing, we should also be weighing or measuring our clippings by volume. So if you do this on a long enough basis, you'll be able to track trends and you'll be able to see how each of our maintenance practices affects the grass growth and also the green speed. So it's not a one solution fits all basis. So we need to study what each of our golf courses do, because we each manage the grass differently. So by observing how your grass reacts, by observing how much clippings you generate and how it relates to green speed over time, we should be able to make sure that we are able to adjust the maintenance practices to make sure the grass just grows just enough not to die. And by doing so, I think you will be able to adjust your maintenance practices to increase your green speed over time. So coming back to this, what is the role of a golf course superintendent? As I mentioned earlier, it's not just to grow grass. I think golf course superintendent's role is certainly to manage expectations. I think we are all asked to do a lot of things by our owners and our members, and I think it's our job to tell them what we can and cannot do. We also need to have the facts and data on hand to obtain the resources to meet those expectations. Having data is very important. Having facts is very important. And especially when it relates to budgets and money, having the exact costs related to each management practice is also very important. For our golf course, I've also came up with a table that we track every single task that we do, so we know how many man hours are required to do every single task. So we've had many conversations before as to why we need so many staff. And usually by having all this information at hand, I'm able to have a conversation with my Greens committee, and then I can tell them, I say we need this many people because this is what we all do. And usually I can tell them, if we want to reduce staff, then I can direct them to my list of manpower and say, which aspects do you want me to cut? And the same applies to green speed. If you need more money for certain things, we have quantified the cost, and then we can go to our members to have a discussion with them. And lastly, once we have our resources, it's a job of a golf course superintendent to allocate those by priority. There's always a lot that we need to do on a golf course. As a superintendent, I think one of our main things that we need to do is to prioritize. We need to decide what gets done first before the other. So to summarize things, if there's one thing that I want to take away from this presentation, I would have to say is that the secret to happiness is to lower your expectations. If you cannot lower your members or committee's expectations, then we should lower ours also. Thank you very much. For those that would like to contact me to ask me questions about how to lower your members' expectations, you can contact me at my email there.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, Jack. While we're collating all the questions here, I'd just like to say that your webinar presentations are just as refreshingly dry and informative as you are person to person. And we look forward to getting you back in front of your peers, because that's a really fantastic presentation. I especially like the line, "We do our best to kill the grass, but make sure it doesn't die." So, that's a real sort of black magic type of the black art of greenskeeping. So I found that very enlightening. I have a question. Observing, managing expectations. I mean, obviously you've been at this member club for 14 years. How did you evolve in being able to learn, to manage the expectations? I know from a skill and temperament perspective to start with. How is that process going? How did you sort of organic? Because I think that's the biggest challenge that a lot of greenskeepers have, actually talking to their board or the owner, etc., and to manage their expectations.
Well, certainly that is one of the biggest challenges that we had here. at a members club, I think one of the hardest things to come to grips with is that every single member is probably a boss. If you work at a private club, maybe you have a GM or you have a director or the owner, and then you can just go to one person and one person makes the call. At a members club, you begin to realize that every single person is your boss. Every single golfer that plays golf is your boss. And if they see something wrong on the golf course, you'll be sure to hear about it. Because of this, also in the members club, we have a lot of bureaucracy. Just to give you an example, I have a greens committee. If let's say I want to purchase something, a machine or something that costs above a certain amount of money, I need to go to my greens committee to present, get approval to purchase the machine. I have to go to my tender board to confirm what are the tender details. Then once the tender is done, I have to evaluate it, go back to my greens committee. Then I go back to my tender board, and then only I go back to my main committee. So it's actually very bureaucratic. And at a members club, I have a greens meeting every month. As we mentioned earlier, I think they have this at their convenience. My first greens meeting for my new committee happens to be this Saturday at 2 p.m. So for those of you who don't work at members club, you should also realize how lucky you are. I don't really have a choice, so I have to make time. When you first start at a members club, I think it can be very frustrating. I think if you don't know how to operate within a members club environment, I think it is very frustrating. You might even get to a case where you stop doing things on your own, because every time you do something, a member will come and ask you, why are you doing this? You want to try something new, and somebody will say, why are you doing this? Or, why are you spending money? I think that happens a lot at a members club. So you start to learn that if you can do things to improve the golf course without letting them know, that's one. You just go and do it. I think if you're able to demonstrate that you're able to improve the golf course over time, they do leave you alone. And the other important thing is actually having what I mentioned in my presentation is having the numbers available. I stress that a lot in my presentation, because through the years I've learned that actually this is one of the most important things that you can do. A lot of superintendents say, they don't give me money for this, they don't give me money for that, or they don't approve this or approve that. I think you seriously need to ask yourself, how is it that you present your case to the members? Just an example of managing this is, let's say, our annual machinery replacement plan. I think a lot of superintendents will find it difficult to get approval and budgets to buy machinery. So what we did many years ago was to present it, to have a plan, to come up with a plan to a Greens committee. So what we did was we came up and started to have data and have information to say that what is the optimal time to replace your machinery. Do you run it to the ground, or do you trade it in at a certain time? So we got a discussion going, and we had our annual repair costs, and we came up with the optimum time where just before the maintenance got too high, and we got them to agree on every single machine. Let's say greens mower replaced every 5 years, rough mower every 7 years. So we went through the list, we justified every single thing. We have all the costs involved with every single aspect, every single machine, and they agreed. So they agreed to all these time frames, and we put together a plan. So it was a lot of work for me and my workshop manager to come up with all this data. But then once they agreed to it, it was actually quite straightforward every year after. So every year after, when I want to replace machinery, I just refer to the plan. And then we come up with a list of machinery by priority. And so I don't have to keep on asking them for permission to buy machinery. I just said, you already agreed to this plan. This is the basis behind it. So we get that. I think it also relates to like manpower. Believe me that it's not easy to get manpower, especially at a members club. I often hear members saying that we have too many members and the staff are not doing anything, etc., etc. So like what I mentioned, we actually compiled a manpower listing of all the tasks. So what you can do is that you can identify like greens mowing. You maybe need 4 staff per 9, 3 staff per 9, and they take 2 hours. So there you go, like 3 staff, 2 hours, you have 6 man hours to mow 1 9. How many 9s you have, how many days you do it. And I think if you just compile all this, at the end you have a list of every single thing you do. You have a estimate of how much time you need, and from there you can justify and derive how much manpower you need. So I was questioned before by my committee to justify the numbers, and that's what I brought up. I said, look, fine, if you want to cut back on my manpower, I said, we go through the list, and then you can go through and see which things you want me to do less of, what things you don't want me to do anymore, then we can come up with it. So after I told them that, then they left me alone. And the other thing I think that's important is that when you attend meetings, the Greens meetings or meetings with your bosses, I think you have to be able to say what you think should or should not be done. I think just because they're your bosses, just because they're the owners, if you end up agreeing with everything they tell you, and if something goes wrong, who do you think they'll come look for to blame? They'll come back to you. So that was a challenge. I mean, you do need to be able to tell them that this is not right, or you tell them that if you do this, this is what's going to happen. And usually I will tell them, I say, in my professional opinion, this is what I think. If you want to do it, I will still go ahead and do it. Then I make sure that I minute it down and have a record to say that, look, okay, the Green Subcommittee decided to do this. So that is an important thing to do. And you need to tell them if you think that something is not right.
So knowledge is power, and your own credibility is power, and the ability to express it is all very important. So yeah. You've been working and you've got an MBA, and you have you developed all this information yourself. But for somebody who's starting out and maybe is just starting out in this sort of role to do this, how did you collate this information? I mean, I assume some of the information on equipment maintenance came from suppliers. Some of the other information came from other sources. So say somebody who's watching this now would like to start this process. I mean, obviously being able to understand the numbers is an important aspect, and being able to express them. But also, where did you source a lot of this, or did you have to build it all yourself?
Well, to be honest, I think the most important thing is our attitude, actually. To begin with, as the person in charge or as the superintendent, I think there are 2 ways you can look at it. If you look at it and say, it's like that, that's how it is. Or you can say that, what can I do about it? If your attitude is to say that, that's the way it's been, it's like that. And then you end up just following along with how the situation is, and nothing changes, and then you complain about the situation every year, like I do. Or you can say like, oh, okay, these are the issues that we have, and how do we go about solving them? In this day and age, with Google, with the internet, you have so much resources available to find an answer. I have some people that they, for everything that they want an answer to, they call somebody, they call a supplier. Like what chemical to use, what rate to use. I think it's important that as a superintendent, if you want to do your job properly, I think you should know, right? You should know how something works. You should know what is it for. So I think it shows in your attitude that, if you really bother to learn, if you really want to solve your problems, there are many, many resources. If you just start with the idea that I have this problem, how do I go about fixing it? These are the limitations that I have. I always talk about limitations. I think, to begin with, like, let's say your greens are dying, what do you do, right? I think you have to identify each and every factor that's involved. Example is, let's say you do a soil test. A lot of people do soil tests. I think some people do soil tests just to do soil tests, and they can tell the members that I have done a soil test, you know. But how many people actually do take steps to address the issues that are highlighted there? I remember when I first started in this industry, we did a soil test and say we're low on calcium. So we're low on calcium, okay. Then I talked to some suppliers, they said, try this. Okay, I tried it. Then in the next year, we check again, it's still low on calcium. Look, at that point in time, you can decide that, okay, we can continue what we're doing. If you do continue what you're doing, you check the next year, you probably end up with the same result. So, you know, then I went back to the drawing board and said like, hey, something's wrong. What are we doing differently? What are we doing wrong? So we adjusted our program from there. You know, we switched to something that's more affordable and we increased the rates. And so we're able to achieve that. So there are many, many resources available. I think suppliers are a great source of information. Like when we were compiling the information on machinery cost and things like that, we definitely consulted the suppliers to say that what's the recommendation. And you also have to do your own independent research to see. So we not only asked them how many years do we need to replace the machines with, but we also had our own data. We keep track of how much we spend on every single machine. So we're able to extract all the repair costs, all the spare parts, all the maintenance costs, and we're able to see over time how that affects our expenditure. That's what I mentioned, you know, it's if you want higher green speeds, you do need to measure them. You do need to measure them on a daily basis. You do need to measure your clippings. You need to know all these things. Otherwise, you're just guessing. You know, you have no what do you call it? No basis to decide things. I think also, you know, like the seminars the AGIF puts up, or your local superintendents associations, or even the suppliers, when they arrange demo days or they arrange seminars, I find it odd that some people just don't want to attend them. You know, I think they provide a great opportunity not only to listen to what the speaker says, but to ask questions. I asked a lot of questions, maybe sometimes too many, but I think that's how we all learn.
Well, thanks. I mean, the education side, as you know, working with GC SAM and GC MAM and the MGA is very important for us. And since you are, you know, been one of the drivers and supporters of the Certificate of Greenskeeping, and while we have you, you know, on this this call, I mean, I'd like to hear your opinions on how that particular program has worked with you as a mentor. And I think you have two of your staff who are in the program as well, or have gone through it. Just any feedback that you have for us on that program.
Oh, the Certificate of Greenskeeping is great.
Like that.
I think there's this quote that I like also, you know, it says, you don't know what you know until you know, right? So, I mean, you might think you know something, but do you have the basis to make that decision? I think the Certificate of Greenskeeping gives a very good basis for that. You know, it gives all the basics. It goes through, I think the curriculum is great. You cover every major aspect of how to properly grow grass and what are the things that affect it. The great thing from it with two of my assistants was the enthusiasm while attending the course. You know, they had projects they had to do, they had questions they need to answer. I think to me that was the biggest difference, that you force them to think about certain things. I think it's always important to ask why. You know, if let's say if I say do this, just because I say do this, I think maybe you shouldn't do it. You should think about why you should do it, and not only like why, but how does it affect things. So when they attended the course, I think it was great. They're very enthusiastic. Since the course has finished, maybe the enthusiasm has gone down a bit. So I think you should have a follow-up course for that.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, we are looking at you know, CIG2 and incorporating other things like financial presentations and necessary aspects, and it's great to have your support along with our sponsors and support. So we're happy to get that positive feedback. I have a question from Pak Julius in Jakarta. He's asking Jack, any special treatment to increase green speeds, i.e. Potassium, calcium, or growth retardant? So to speak.
For sure, if you look at the principles behind it, right? As I was half joking, like saying that concrete is faster than carpet. I think if you want to achieve green speed, you have to look at how to make things firmer and smoother. So plant growth regulators are great. You know, we use them a lot on the greens. You stop the grass from growing as much, and if you do that, of course, you get increasing green speed. Something else you can consider is like, so if you go back to the thought that smoother is faster, so what else can you do to make things smoother? Like you can double cut. So you double cut, you just trim off the edges. You can increase green speed by that. If you do dusting, you get some dusting sand. You fill up all the holes between the greens, the grass itself. That also increase green speed. Rolling, lightweight rolling. That's the objective. You make it smoother. You increase green speed. And then if you think about it, how about increasing green speed? You also have increased firmness. So how do you increase firmness? If you have too much thatch, obviously that's going to slow down your green. So that's what I was saying. I mean, you have to look at things that directly impact green speed and also things that affect the plant itself. So if you have too much thatch, you probably need to implement a program to address that issue. So if your greens are firm, your greens are hard, yes, they will roll faster. But on the other hand, you have to balance it out and see that, you know, you don't overly compact them and still have to keep them alive. As far as the amendments, I don't know. You know, people seem to think that the silica has an impact and things like that. As I said, I mean, if you measure your green speed, and we did, you know, when we tried all these products, yeah, you should be able to see at your own place what impact you get. Like calcium is quite important, you know, to increase the firmness of the leaf and things. So I think whatever you want to try, there are many products on the market that claim to increase green speed. I think whatever you want to try, as long as you have objective data, right? If you measure it every day, this is my green speed. If I apply this product, do I get an increase in green speed? I think it's important that you measure green speed all the time and not just for before tournaments, because the objective is not to find out or not just to inform your members, hey, today is rolling at this speed. I think over time you have to find out how your management practices impact green speed, right? This verticutting more increase green speed? I don't know. You know, your course may have more thatch than mine. It's hard to say. This needle tining increase green speed? I don't know. You know, I think it's important that superintendents find out for themselves. You know, just take daily green speeds. I think if you do it long enough, you should know whether some of these things work. With relation to plant fertility, I don't really agree with putting something more than another just to increase speed. I think we know what the plant requires. If you do a soil test, there are certain target levels we're supposed to achieve. I think soil tests are more for plant health rather than for increasing green speed. So the objective is to make sure a plant is healthier so that it can tolerate more stress and be able to do more things to it. So for me, like fertility and all these things, I have target levels to meet from my soil test, and that's how I plan it.
I could just ask what rates you're using, so I assume it's all variable depending on your daily testing of the greens and tinkering with all the aspects.
If you're asking for primo, I think our current rate is 300 mil per hectare. We do it every 2 weeks. We have gone up to 500, and we have tried it weekly. Again, you know, I think each course is different. Each grass is different, so I think you need to see what effect you're after and how your grass reacts to it. You know, by taking clippings, weighing clippings and things like that, you should be able to see whether you have a decrease or or you should really see how your grass is reacting, because there's no point, I think, in doing what somebody else does when you're killing your own greens or it doesn't work as well.
Jack, I think we've got all the questions through. I mean, it was, as usual, a great presentation. If you're able to see the chats, you have so much great feedback from all the attendees, from seeing why you're very successful, agreeing on your challenges, anyway, as usual, Jack, I mean, we've had you speak in our events, and every time we have the fantastic feedback, and we're very grateful that you spend some time, especially with the new committee coming on. We know it's a busy time, but to share your expertise. So on behalf of the AGIF and all the people involved, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Good. I'll just do some housekeeping. I mean, on the thatch topic, by the way, that Jack mentioned, we did have a couple of webinars on thatch, which are now on YouTube with Dr. Rock Whistle and also Roger Getz, who many of you know. So if you want to combine some of that expertise on thatch, it's available through our website and on the YouTube channel. As we know, every Thursday we're running events to make it an easy schedule. And we tend to rotate on club management and turf management issues. So next Thursday, we'll have Eric Rule, who's CCM, General Manager of Hazelton in the United States. He had spent some time out here in Asia as well. And he's going to be talking about nickels and dimes, which, both club management and turf management, as we're reiterating, is a pretty important topic, the finances of that. And then we have the Asian Doctor of Green Speed here on our webinar now, but then in 2 weeks' time, we'll have, as Jack said, Dr. Tom Nicolai, the Doctor of Green Speed from Michigan State, and he'll be talking about the ABCs of putting green maintenance. And then we'll be publishing a schedule throughout in November and December fairly soon, so keep your eyes open. Thanks once again, Jack. Really appreciate it. And to everybody, have a good rest of the day and a great weekend. All right, bye-bye.